Hi, everybody. Happy Valentine's Day or happy Valentine's Day season for whenever you see this or hear this. It can be Valentine's Day every day of the year because what I'm talking about in this video is self-love. I love that more and more people are talking about self-love, not just all the focus on romantic love, which is wonderful, but obviously not everybody has that in their life at that time. The love of friends and just the people that we love in our lives is a beautiful focus of Valentine's Day. But when we're in a trauma healing journey, when we're in a chronic fatigue recovery phase, if we're trying to heal from chronic fatigue or any kind of chronic illness, there can be a cocoon period. I put out a video a couple months back about the cocooning that happens when we're healing trauma and when we're healing from chronic fatigue. Chronic fatigue has this way of bringing us into a cocoon. When we're in a cocoon, we don't have as many people in our lives usually. Now, it can be more of an inward cocoon, but a lot of times it's inward and outward. It's like people fall away and we don't have a lot of support. I invite you to join me this year in having this year be about the love for your inner child, for the parts of you, the parts of me is my intention, the parts of us that we don't like. I'm going to use the word hate. It seems like a weird thing to say, but this Valentine's Day, can we focus on the places that we have self-hate? What can we do to bring more compassion to the places in ourselves that we hate? Self-hatred, healing from self-hatred, and learning self-love is a process. It can be a long process when we've got attachment trauma. It can be a complicated and intense process because real self-love, in my experience, comes from finding all the places that we can't stand about ourselves, all the parts of us that have been cast away, cast into our shadow, and bringing them back into light. We cannot do that in a day. So we cannot do that today on Valentine's Day. But to hold the intention, can we create the intention of the day as this is how I'm going to build self-love? It's not about the more superficial things that a lot of people talk about. It's not about treating yourself to things. That can be a part of it, of course. But to me, the real self-love is about, and I'm still very much in process, finding all the places in ourselves that we hate, that we can't stand, that we judge, that we shame, that we feel shame and bitterness, resentment, and people that we feel those things for, because that's showing up in ourselves too. The things that we resent in others is probably showing up in ourselves. A lot of us with chronic fatigue tend to be people who are very introspective, internalize things, and so these energies go inward. They're going towards the self. Resentment, loathing, anger, rage, frustration, shame is a huge, huge, huge one. So what can we do? Again, we can't do it in a day, but we can really refocus our intention, and we can do it for the year. We're still in winter. So the big energy buzzing of the year is still yet to come. We're still hibernating in winter, and so it's still a time to make intentions for the year, in my view. One of those intentions that we can create on Valentine's Day, I think a really good one is, I want to go towards, and if you're already doing that, wonderful, to just kind of ground down again, solidify again. I want to keep going, or I want to start going into the spaces that I hate about myself or about others, any hate in our bodies. And how can I start to heal that? Hate is a combination of anger and disgust that happens over time, that turns into resentment and contempt because there's nowhere for it to go. Underneath all of that is grief. The anger becomes this prominent energy. It's cutting and it's very directed. But if we feel like there's nowhere for it to go, it comes in towards the self. We blame ourselves for all the pain that we've suffered in our lives. That was the best strategy for us when we were little, to get through our childhood, to make sense of the world that we were living in. We've got parts of ourselves that we hate that we have cast off. One of the things I'm using a lot in this time period is parts work, internal family systems-based parts work. It's really wonderful for working with the defenses that we have against the vulnerable parts. These core wounds The pains in our core wound, the wound to the sense of self that happens with attachment trauma, those are well defended. Those have lots of defenses around them. Even if we have good access to tears in general, those tears are usually very well defended and they are hard to access. So the trauma healing process is about working to open up the space more and more over time. That's what I talk about all the time on this channel. If you want to know more about that, watch any of my videos. It's about opening up the space. How do we do that cognitively, somatically? It's about opening up the body and the mind, making it safe, bringing in as much safety as we can over time to let those emotions come up. Parts work is really helpful to get into the defenses. We're looking for a place of connection. Even if we're not accessing the deepest levels of grief, rage, and pain, we're looking to connect to it as much as we can. Parts work is a great way to do that. Another great way to do that is inner child work and somatic experiencing. All of these methods are wonderful in their own way and at their own time, and you can kind of play with different ones at different times and see if they work for you at that time, because the body is the wisdom keeper. The body knows what it needs at that time. Now, we don't always know, so we've got to kind of guess and try things out. But our intention is about looking for what are the energies that come up in my body that I hate. Now, a really good, easy example is fatigue. How many of us who have had or have chronic fatigue hate the fatigue? It would be natural to do so. You know, all the ways that it inhibits us, all the ways that it just prevents us from living the life that we want, all the repercussions that it means for our lives with relationships, with diet, with exercise, with pursuing career, pursuing activities and hobbies and joy, access to joy. All these things, so many things, I could never even list them all, are affected. It's every aspect of life that's impacted by fatigue. So what happens is we start to hate it. Or we hate it from the beginning. I don't know. I've always, from the very beginning of when I started experiencing fatigue, I hated it. I hated it. Absolutely hated it because it had meaning. So like the one question is, what is the meaning that it has? What does it mean for my life? What does it mean for what I can't do? Because that's the spot of loss. Why do we hate it? We're angry that we can't do the things that we want to do. Something is stopping us, inhibiting us, stopping. We're being thwarted. Creates a lot of frustration and anger, but the anger is really protecting the grief underneath, the sadness, the loss of what we can't do anymore. So that's where to focus. I want to make this video kind of brief, but really everything that I talk about on my channel is about how to build self-love. And it's speaking from a person who has experienced a vast amount of self-hatred and loathing in my life. It's been an extremely prevalent energy in my body, and it got to the point of being debilitating. It was so intense. And chronic fatigue, one way of thinking about it is it sort of represents all the parts of us that we hate, all the parts of us that we don't love, we don't have compassion for. And the thing about these energies is we can't just hear this or think this or have some realization and then be like, okay, I just need to send compassion for it. Oh, now I understand. Okay, let me just do that. Doesn't work like that, of course. But to keep recognizing, to keep tuning into and like trying to hone in more and more specifically on what are the parts that I hate and understand it more. And so much of the work is about softening into it to at least be curious and interested. And it's like, why? It can be frustrated, curious at first. Why? Oh, why? What is it? What are you trying to tell me? What are you trying? Of course, we're looking for a more soft curiosity, interest in like, what is my body trying to tell me? It's like more of a concern, more of a love. But if it's not there yet, that's fine. Just like any amount of curiosity and the belief, I do want to know. And that's the thing that chronic fatigue helps us. The desperation helps us want to know. If it wasn't for desperation, I wouldn't have learned a lot of things on this process. I'm going to be real. Because I wouldn't probably be doing any of this work. It was the suffering that brought me to the place of like, okay, fine, I'm listening. Like, Jesus, like, I like, just, okay, fine, I'll listen. Of course, that doesn't really get us into the energy because it's like, well, I don't trust you if you're coming to it from like that. But so my point is there are these sort of layers of surrender. That's not very much surrender. It's like, it's sort of surrender, but there's not body. It's not somatic surrender at all. There's still a fight to it. But surrender happens in layers. Surrender is like we keep getting to places where we're brought to our knees and like it softens. It does. It softens us. It softens our harsh edges that we've developed over all this time of carrying hurt and pain with nowhere for it to go. And we don't know what to do with it and how to heal it and how to work with all these unconscious parts. So to circle it all around, this is what I believe is at the core of self-love. It's how can I soften this energy? How can I soften? How can I be curious about the parts of myself that I hate? How can I bring more love to it? If it doesn't work just by intention, which usually it doesn't with these unconscious parts, how can I find compassion? So this is why hearts work and inner child work, especially in my experience, are ones that help us bring compassion to these energies. Because when we can connect to an image, a sensation, especially images, and this is coming from a person that does not have a particularly strong third eye, and I couldn't do parts work and inner child work for a very long time because I just had a really strong aversion to any of that, which was also a part, but I didn't know how to work with that at the time. But I find whatever we can connect with, whether it's a body sensation, whether it's an image of a younger version of us, if it's a memory, if it's when I say a version of ourselves that's younger, that's not usually an explicit memory. That's just like a picture of your inner child as they are right now, what they're feeling right now, what they're carrying, the burden they're carrying right now. Or if it's like an image of a part. So, for example, a part that I was working with yesterday was a pile of stones. That's the image that came up from the sensation that I was having in my body. The weight, I'm sure you guys know what I'm talking about, the deep weight, heaviness that comes with powerless energy. So, a pile of stones, just that image alone is helping me connect with it in a different way than hate. I have no reason to hate these stones. I don't hate the stones. I do not hate the stones. But when it's just an experience in my body, I hate it. So paralysis is the hardest one for me. I'm feeling a lot more love for it this month, I would say. But it's because the suffering took me to a new layer of surrender and compassion, and then doing parts work with it. And then we can interact with, for example, the stones and ask it questions and see, what is it about? Why is it here? What is it protecting? What is it doing in my body from its perspective? And when we're an empath, this can be a wonderful thing because it's like, oh, well, now I can have empathy for the stones. But also remembering that's a part of me. But it gives us a little distance too. So it's just a suggestion, something to keep in mind today on Valentine's Day, the day that celebrates love in our lives. And whether you hate it as a Hallmark holiday or you love it because it's celebrating love, however you feel about it, if you want to celebrate it, can you join me in, the intention of self-love in the specific way of, I want to learn to love all the places that I hate. I want to seek out the places, the energies, the parts of me that I've discarded, that I was told, that I got the message in my childhood and throughout my life that the parts of me that are not okay, how can I be okay with them? And then the answer to that question could be parts work, somatic experiencing, and inner child work. Those are my sort of tried and true modalities for getting in there with these self-hatred parts. So that's my suggestion. I hope it's helpful. I hope you are having a beautiful Valentine's Day, whether you have lots of people in your life who you love and you're getting to spend a lot of time with, or a few. Scratch the just. I love the small, the intimate life path. That's more me, the small circle of people you really love and trust. Or if this Valentine's Day you are on your own, just you and your inner child, no matter what scenario it is for you, can this Valentine's Day still be about your inner child, your love for him or her or him, the intention to love the places in yourself that you hate, and then, carrying that intention throughout this year. It can start here on Valentine's Day. This might be the first holiday video I've made, but I do have a video about powerlessness coming out very soon. And it's a great example of, like I was talking about earlier, of a place that has had a lot of self-hatred for me. A great example of a place that I am actively working on How can I find self-love for this part? And the how is learning from it. Having always this question, what is this part trying to teach me? What is this part trying to tell me, trying to show me? What did I experience? What happened? What message did I get? What is it carrying? It's amazing how connecting with these parts will change the visceral experience of that part. So after connecting with these parts, when that thing comes up again in your regular life, we can bring in the memory of working with it in parts work or inner child work or somatic experiencing, and it gives a different flavor. And so it's like a progression over time of that. And it will bring emotion at some point. It will connect you with the emotion. It it will. All right, happy Valentine's Day. I hope you have a day filled with love or intentional love to look for the places that you hate in yourselves. That's where my intention is with my inner child and obviously the people around me, but my internal experience of Valentine's Day is about how can I show love to my inner child? And it's about loving the hard places, giving the hard spaces the things that they need. Not an easy process, but one of the most rewarding and important ones in our lives, I think, to live a vital and joyous life and connected life. Okay, happy Valentine's Day. I hope you're all doing well, and I'll see you on the next video. Bye.